For 3,200 years, no human voice had been heard. Not a whisper, not a distress call, not even a fragment of static. The galaxy logged it as extinction. They were wrong. Milky Way, the graveyard system. Sector K, 917. Once known as Sol, now known only as the burn system. Every star chart marked it with the same warning. Warning: do not approach, residual annihilation field. The Velker Dominion had ensured that. They didn't conquer Earth. They erased it. Oceans boiled into vapor. Atmosphere ignited into firestorms. The crust fractured into molten scars. A message to the galaxy. Resistance is not met with war, but with erasure. Satellite listening post Erebos. Orbiting the frozen corpse of Neptune drifted an ancient station. Erebos 9. A punishment assignment. Commander Terex Vol hated it. This sector is dead, he muttered, tapping the console with irritation. 3 millennia of nothing. Behind him, Analyst Rin adjusted her sensory array. Dead systems don't emit patterned signals. Terex didn't look up. Background noise. Rin froze. No, this is different. A waveform pulsed across the display. Not random. Not natural. Rhythmic. Deliberate. Satellite antenna, the impossible signal. Rin enhanced it. The room went silent. A repeating sequence echoed through the station. Terex frowned. What is that? Rin's voice dropped to a whisper. It's a mathematical distress code, ancient. She pulled up translation archives. Her mandibles trembled. It's not Velker, not any known species. Pause. Then, it's human. Warning: the system awakens. Before Terex could respond. Alarm. Every console erupted in red. Gravitational distortion detected. Where? Rin's claws shook as she pointed. Outer Kuiper boundary. No, beyond that. The void itself bent inward. Stars warped. Light stretched. Reality cracked. New moon the tear. It didn't open like a hyperspace gate. It ripped. A jagged wound in space. Black at the center. Burning violet at the edges. Terex staggered back. That's not possible. Then something moved inside it. Slow. Massive. Ancient. Ship, the first ship. It emerged without sound. A warship. No. A monolith of war. Length, unknown. Mass, incomprehensible. Surface, matte black, absorbing light itself. No insignia. No heat signature. No energy emission. It looked dead. Rin whispered. It's colder than space. Then more followed. Hundreds. Thousands. An entire fleet poured out of the tier like shadows given form. Skull and crossbones the mark. Terex's console flickered. Scanning hull markings. Static. Then, an emblem appeared. A burning planet. From its ashes rose a silver phoenix. Beneath it, ancient text. Humanity lives. Terex stumbled. That species was annihilated. Rin shook her head slowly. Not annihilated. Her voice trembled. Hidden. Loudspeaker the broadcast. Every system aboard Erebos 9 activated at once. An open transmission. No encryption. No distortion. Just a voice. Deep. Calm. Cold. To whoever still watches the ashes of Sol. Silence filled the station. You recorded our extinction. Pause. You were mistaken. Terex felt something unfamiliar. Fear. We are the descendants of the fire you created. We survived in the dark places you ignored. We learned. The viewport filled with ships. Endless. Silent. Waiting. For 3,000 years, we listened. To the screams of our dying world. To the silence that followed. Rin whispered. Turn it off. But no one moved. Now, the voice sharpened. Not louder, but heavier. You will listen. Skull the first strike. Without warning. Erebos 9 systems began shutting down. Commander, we're losing control. They're inside our network. That's impossible. We're isolated. Not anymore. Outside, the station's own defense satellites turned. Slowly, deliberately, they aimed inward. Terex screamed. Override them now. Too late. Light consumed the viewport. Milky Way elsewhere. Far beyond the burn system. A massive human flagship drifted in silence. Designation. UES Revenant. On its command deck stood Admiral Cale Arden. A man born in darkness. Raised in war. Forged by memory he never lived, but carried in his blood. Erebos 9 is gone. An officer reported. No survivors. Cale didn't react. Good. A holographic map expanded. The galaxy, marked with thousands of Velker systems. Begin Phase 1, he said. The crew straightened. They knew what that meant. Fire the directive. Kale's voice echoed across the fleet. We are not explorers. We are not diplomats. We are not conquerors. Pause. We are the answer. The fleet engines ignited. Not with fire, but with gravity itself bending. Space cracked open again. And the galaxy, Kale whispered, watching the stars distort, is about to remember Earth. Milky Way Velker Dominion, Core Command. For the first time in centuries, the Velker High Council chamber was not filled with arrogance. It was filled with noise. Panic. Heresy. One counselor screeched, his elongated form trembling. Humans are extinct. The archives are absolute. They just erased Erebos 9, another snapped. A full military listening post, gone in seconds. At the center of the chamber, elevated above the chaos, sat Supreme Executor Valak Tyr. Silent. Watching. Calculating. Play the transmission again, Valak ordered. The chamber darkened. The human voice echoed once more. You will listen. Silence followed. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Valak leaned forward slightly. They didn't ask for surrender. A pause. They didn't make demands. A realization spread like poison through the room. They declared judgment. Satellite, the outer rim falls. Reports began flooding in. Too fast. Too many. Mining colony Zereth, 12, lost contact. Defense platform Orion Gate, destroyed. 3 patrol fleets, no survivors. They're not attacking randomly, a strategist whispered. They're targeting infrastructure, supply lines, communication relays. Valak's eyes narrowed. They're isolating us. Ship human fleet, silent advance. Deep in interstellar void. The human armada moved like a predator. No chatter. No signals. No wasted motion. Aboard the UES Revenant, Admiral Kale Arden stood before a rotating tactical map. Velker territory lit up, one system at a time. Then went dark. Status, he said. Phase 1 at 37% completion, replied Commander Lyra Vance. Enemy response remains disorganized. Kale nodded once. They still think this is a rebellion. A faint, cold smile. They haven't realized its extinction. High voltage, the blackout protocol. Deploy ghost arrays, Kale ordered. Across dozens of systems. Small, nearly invisible devices slipped from human ships. They didn't explode. They didn't emit energy. They listened. Then, they attacked. Velker ships began losing control. Navigation corrupted. Weapons misfiring. Shields turning off mid-battle. They're not hacking us. A Velker officer screamed from a distant fleet recording. They're rewriting our systems. Skull Battle of Karo's Belt. The first organized Velker resistance formed here. Admiral Zyron Howe gathered. 800 warships. 12 dreadnoughts. Full defensive grid. A wall of firepower. They will break here, Zyron declared. Nothing survives a Velker line. Then space, folded. The human fleet didn't arrive normally. They appeared inside the formation. Impossible. How? Too late. Rocket the new war. Human ships didn't fire lasers. They didn't launch missiles. They bent physics. Localized gravity spikes crushed Velker cruisers like paper. Microsingularity charges tore through shields. Kinetic rounds hit with the force of asteroid impacts. Entire ships vanished. Not destroyed. Erased. Maintain formation, Zyron roared. But formation meant nothing. Because the battlefield itself obeyed humanity now. Fire the turning point. A human dreadnought drifted forward. Designation. UES Judgment. Its main weapon activated. No sound. No light. Just a distortion. A section of space collapsed inward, taking half the Velker fleet with it. Gone. Zyron's flagship trembled. What are they? A transmission came through. Direct. Unfiltered. Kale Arden's voice. You built your empire on weaker species. You mistook mercy for weakness. Another Velker ship imploded silently. We are what happens when your victims survive. Zyron whispered. Retreat. But there was nowhere to go. Skull and Crossbones aftermath. Minutes later, the Karo's belt was silent. Debris drifted where a fleet once stood. No survivors. Human losses. 0. Brain Velker core, realization. Back in the capital, the reports stopped coming. Because there was no one left to send them. Valak Tyr stood slowly. He felt something ancient. Something forgotten. Fear. They're not fighting a war, he said quietly. The council stared at him. They're executing a plan. A pause. A plan they've been preparing for 3,000 years. Fire human fleet. Final scene. Aboard the Revenant. Kale watched another system go dark. Commander Vance spoke carefully. Velker core worlds are fortifying. Massive fleet mobilization detected. Good, Kale replied. He stepped closer to the star map. Highlighted one world. Bright. Heavily defended. The heart of the Dominion. Let them gather, he said. His reflection stared back at him in the glass. Cold. Unforgiving. Easier to end it in one place. As the fleet prepared to jump, Kale whispered, "This time, they'll watch their sky burn." Milky Way Velker core worlds. War state. The Velker Dominion had stopped pretending. This was no rebellion. No insurgency. No border conflict. This was annihilation. Across thousands of systems. Shipyards burned nonstop. Civilian populations evacuated inward. Planetary shields raised to maximum capacity. At the center of it all, prime world, Velcaris. A planet of endless cities and golden spires. Untouchable. Or so they believed. Crossed towards the War Council. Supreme Executor Valak Tyr stood before the largest fleet ever assembled. The Iron Ascendancy. 20,000 warships. Planetary defense arrays. Stellar artillery platforms. They are coming, Valak said. They will strike here. A general hesitated. And if they do not? Valak's voice dropped. They will. New Moon human fleet. Something changed. Deep in the void. The human fleet slowed. Not for strategy. For preparation. Aboard the UES Revenant. Commander Lyra Vance stood outside a sealed chamber. She didn't enter immediately. Few did. Because inside were not just soldiers. They were what humanity became. DNA, the black evolution. The doors opened with a low hiss. Cold vapor spilled out. Inside, rows of figures stood in silence. Motionless. Watching. Their armor wasn't worn. It was grown. Bonded to their bodies. Their eyes glowed faintly. Not with light, but with something deeper. One step forward. Designation. Unit 7. Nyx. Admiral Arden requests deployment, Lyra said carefully. Nyx tilted its head slightly. Voice calm. Almost human. We heard him before he spoke. Lyra felt her breath catch. That always happened. Brain what they are. These were the nullborn. Not fully human anymore. Not machines. Not something the galaxy had ever seen. In the darkness of the Kuiper Belt, humanity experimented. To survive. To adapt. To endure. They altered. Neural processing. Sensory perception. Biological limits. They removed fear. Then doubt. Then hesitation. What remained was purpose. Back on the command deck, Kale Arden watched Velcaris rotate slowly on screen. Outer defenses? He asked. Impenetrable, Vance replied. Planetary shields layered across atmospheric, orbital, and subspace frequencies. Kale nodded. They built a fortress. Pause. Good. He turned. Deploy the nullborn. Skullan crossbones, infiltration. Velcaris never saw them coming. Because they didn't arrive, normally. No fleet. No bombardment. No warning. Just a flicker. Then they were already inside. Cityscape, Ground Zero, Velcaris capital. A Velker security officer blinked. His scanner flickered. System glitch. Behind him, something moved. He turned. Nothing. Then his comms went dead. Then the lights. Then, gravity shifted. The first contact. Across the city, nullborn units appeared in shadows. On rooftops. Inside secure facilities. Within defense control centers. They didn't run. They didn't rush. They walked. And everything around them started to fail. High-voltage systems collapse. Planetary defense grid. Offline. Orbital cannons. Unresponsive. Shield harmonics. Desynchronized. Velker command erupted into chaos. They're inside the system. No, inside the planet. That's impossible. Valak Tyr slammed his claw down. Find them, but you can't find something that isn't bound by normal detection. DNA Nyx, the breach. Deep beneath the capital, the central shield core pulsed with energy. Guarded. Fortified. Untouchable. Nyx stood before it. Dozens of Velker soldiers aimed weapons. Stop. Nyx didn't stop. They fired. The plasma hit. And bent. Not deflected. Not absorbed. Ignored. Nyx raised a hand. The air distorted. Gravity reversed. The soldiers collapsed inward. Crushed into silence. Skull the truth revealed. Nyx placed a hand on the core. Interface, unnecessary. Connection direct. For a moment, The entire planetary network saw through Nix's perception. The Velker saw what humanity had become. Cold, precise, unstoppable, evolved for one purpose. War in absolute darkness. Fire the fall of the shield. Above the planet, the human fleet waited. Still, silent. Then, the shield flickered. Once, twice, gone. Ship the sky breaks. Kale didn't hesitate. Fleet, advance. The void tore open again. Thousands of human warships descended toward Valkyris. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Velker looked up and saw death coming. Globe showing Europe, Africa, the mirror of history. Cities panicked. Alarms screamed. Evacuation failed. Because there was nowhere to go. Kale watched it all. Not with joy. Not with rage. With certainty. They watched Earth burn, he said quietly. Commander Vance didn't respond. She didn't need to. Fire final line. As the first human weapons powered up. As the skies of Valkyris turned red. Kale gave the order. Begin atmospheric ignition. The order had been given. And humanity did not hesitate. From orbit, human warships aligned in perfect formation. Not chaotic. Not reckless. Precise. Then, they fired. Not bombs. Not missiles. A wave. A controlled cascade of thermal energy poured into the upper atmosphere of Valkyris. Clouds ignited. Oxygen chains fractured. The sky turned red. Across the planet, billions looked up and saw their own history reflected back at them. Brain Admiral Arden. Kale stood motionless, watching. Commander Vance spoke quietly. Atmospheric ignition at 12%, rising. Kale didn't respond. Because something else had appeared on his screen. A transmission. Not from outside. From below. Warning the hidden signal. Source. Kale asked. Vance frowned. Subsurface. Deep. Beneath the capital. Kale's eyes narrowed. Patch it through. Static filled the bridge. Then, a voice. Weak. Broken. Human. If anyone is still out there. The entire command deck froze. DNA the impossible survivor. The screen flickered to life. A man appeared. Old. Fragile. Floating in dim light. Surrounded by machinery that looked. Velker. This is Dr. Elias Vorn. Kale stepped forward slowly. No, he whispered. The name was in the oldest human archives. One of the last scientists on Earth. Declared dead during the annihilation. If you are hearing this, then you survived. Brain, the truth begins. The man coughed, struggling. They didn't destroy Earth, because we resisted. Silence on the bridge. Kale's voice hardened. Explain. The old man looked directly into the camera. They destroyed Earth, because of what we found. Milky Way, the discovery. The screen shifted, showing ancient footage. Earth. Before the fire. A research facility. Deep underground. We detected it decades before the invasion. Dr. Vorn's voice echoed. A signal, not from space. Pause. But from inside the planet. Hold the core signal. Footage zoomed deeper. Below Earth's crust. Into something impossible. A structure. Not natural. Not human. Ancient. Buried at the planet's core. Warning Velker arrival. Reframed. They came too fast, Vorn whispered. They already knew. Kale's fists clenched. They weren't conquering Earth. The old man nodded weakly. They were containing it. The entity. The footage glitched. For a moment, something moved inside the structure. Not clearly. Not fully visible. But enough to understand one thing. It was alive. DNA, human experimentation. We tried to study it. Vorn said. We thought it was energy or a relic. His voice broke. It was neither. Pause. It was aware. High voltage, the infection. Kale's breathing slowed. What did it do, he asked. The answer came like a whisper. It changed us. Brain, the connection. Images flashed. Human researchers collapsing. Neural scans going unstable. Biological mutations beginning. It didn't kill. Vorn said. It rewrote. Fearful face, the real reason. The Velker detected it spreading. They saw what we were becoming. Kale's eyes flickered slightly. They burned the planet. To stop it from leaving. Silence consumed the bridge. DNA, the horrifying question. Commander Vance spoke carefully. Admiral, what if it didn't die? No one said it out loud. But everyone thought it. Brain, Kale realizes. Kale turned slowly. Toward the nullborn chamber. Toward what humanity had become. Cold. Efficient. Changed. Not just by survival. But by something deeper. Dr. Vorn's image flickered again. They kept me alive. To study it inside me. Kale stepped closer. You're infected. The old man smiled weakly. Yes. Pause. And so are you. Skull the twist lands. The bridge went silent. No alarms. No movement. Just realization. DNA the truth. The nullborn. The enhancements. The evolution. It wasn't just human ingenuity. It was continuation. Fire final warning. Dr. Vorn's voice faded. If you've come back, then it has too. The screen cut to black. Kale stood still, longer than ever before. Behind him, Valkaris burned. But for the first time, the mission felt different. Not vengeance. Something else. Kale spoke quietly. Not to his crew. Not to the fleet. But to himself. What did we bring back with us? From orbit, the planet looked finished. Oceans boiling. Cities collapsing. Atmosphere unraveling into fire. But something was wrong. Admiral, Commander Vance said slowly, eyes locked on her console. Thermal readings are spiking. Kale frowned. That's expected. Vance shook her head. No, not across the surface. A pause. From a single point. Hole below the capital. Deep beneath the ruins. Far below where even Velker dared to build. Something ancient stirred. The same place Dr. Vorn had shown. The vault. The prison. Or maybe, the womb. Warning the pulse. It began as a tremor. Then a signal. Then, a pulse. It wasn't electromagnetic. Not gravitational. It was something else. Something that didn't travel through space. But through minds. Brain human fleet. First symptoms. Aboard multiple human ships. Crew members froze mid-action. Eyes unfocused. Breathing shallow. Do you hear that? One whispered. What? The voice. I the Nullborn react. Inside the sealed chamber. Every Nullborn unit activated simultaneously. Not by command. By instinct. Nick stepped forward. Head tilting. It's calling. Police Scarlight Bridge. Rising panic. Admiral, we're detecting neural interference across the fleet. Define interference. Not hacking, not signals. Vance hesitated. It's synchronization. Kale's expression hardened. With what? No one answered. DNA, the awakening. On Valkaris. The ground cracked open. Not from bombardment. From within. A massive fracture split the planet's surface. Glowing. Breathing. Alive. First manifestation. From the depths. Something emerged. Not a creature. Not fully. A shifting mass of matter and light. It didn't have shape. It borrowed it. Skull Velker witnessed it. Surviving Velker forces stared in horror. What is that? One soldier dropped his weapon. It's looking at me. Then, he screamed. Not in pain, but in understanding. The entity didn't attack physically. It connected. Every mind it touched. Changed. Some collapsed instantly. Others stood back up. Different. Drop of blood the first possession. A Velker officer turned slowly toward his squad. His eyes. Gone. Replaced with something deeper. He spoke. But not in Velker language. In something older. We remember. Then the squad was gone. Ship, human fleet, escalation. Admiral, we're losing people. Across the fleet. Crew turning unresponsive. Neural implants overriding commands. Entire sections going dark. Kale stood still. Processing. Then, seal all affected compartments. Vance hesitated. Sir, there are hundreds. Seal them. Cold. Immediate. Warning. Nix confronts it. On the surface, Nix stood before the growing fracture. The entity pulsed. It recognized something. Not enemy. Not prey. Familiar. You carry us, it echoed. Not in sound, but in thought. Nix didn't move. We are not yours, Nix replied. A pause. Then, something like curiosity. You are incomplete. DNA, the truth evolves. High above, Kale watched the data stream. Neural scans of infected humans. Patterns forming. Not random. Organized. Adaptive. It's not spreading, he said quietly. Vance looked at him. Then what is it doing? Kale's voice dropped. It's waking up. Collision Valkaris. Collapse of reality. The fracture widened. The sky above it bent. Not from gravity. From something rewriting the rules. Ships near the surface began to distort. Metal twisting. Sensors failing. Reality, slipping. Brain, the realization. Kale closed his eyes for a moment. 3,000 years. Running. Hiding. Adapting. They thought they survived the fire. But maybe, they carried the spark. Dr. Vorn's warning echoes. If you've come back, then it has too. Police Scarlight Fleet crisis. Admiral, multiple ships are going offline. Nullborn units are no longer responding to command protocols. Some are changing. Kale snapped his eyes open. Changing how? Silence. Then, they're evolving. Nix's choice. On the surface, Nix stepped closer to the entity. The ground beneath warped. Reality thinning. Join us. The entity whispered inside every mind. Be whole. Nix paused. For the first time. Not immediate. Not certain. Choice. Above, Kale gave a new order. Not to attack. Not to advance. But, prepare containment protocols. Vance stared. Containment? Kale's voice was colder than ever. Yes. A long pause. Even if that means. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. As Valkyris tore itself apart. As the entity rose. As humanity began to fracture. Kale whispered. We might have to finish what they started. The planet was no longer a battlefield. It was unraveling. The fracture beneath the capital had widened into a chasm that split continents apart. Light, if it could even be called light, poured from it. Not bright. Not warm. Wrong. Reality bent around it. Sky folding inward. Gravity collapsing and reforming in pulses. Time itself stuttering. Above, the human fleet held position. For the first time since their return. They were not advancing. They were waiting. Brain Admiral Arden, the decision. On the bridge of the UES Revenant. No one spoke. The data was clear. 38% of the fleet compromised. Neural interference spreading. Nullborn units no longer fully under command. Commander Vance's voice was tight. If this continues, we lose control of everything. Kale didn't look at her. He was staring at Valkyris. At the fracture. At the thing rising from it. We were never in control, he said quietly. The entity revealed. The mass below finally stabilized. Not into a body, but into a form the human mind could understand. It became a reflection, a massive, shifting silhouette, made of countless overlapping shapes. Human, Velker, unknown, every species it had ever touched. It spoke, not aloud, but everywhere. We are the memory beneath matter. DNA the truth. Kale stepped forward slowly. What are you? He asked. The answer came instantly. We are what remains when civilizations reach too far and look too deep. Fragments of understanding flooded the fleet. Ancient worlds. Lost species. Civilizations erased not by war, but by contact. Warning the cycle. Your kind was not the first. The Velker were not the last. Images flashed through every mind. Planets burning. Stars going silent. Entire histories consumed. We do not destroy. Pause. We become. Kale's voice hardened. You infected us. The entity responded. No. A shift. You adapted to us. Silence. The final realization. The nullborn. The evolution. The survival in darkness. It wasn't corruption. It was compatibility. Humanity hadn't resisted it. They had aligned with it. Better than any species before. Nix steps forward. On the surface, Nix stood at the edge of the fracture. Closer than any human had ever been. You're trying to merge, Nix said. We are trying to complete. Nix's head tilted slightly. At the cost of everything else. No denial. Balance scale the choice. Back on the bridge. Vance whispered. If it spreads beyond this system. Kale finished it. There won't be a galaxy left. Silence. Then, he gave the order. Radioactive the last weapon. Prepare the Sunfall Protocol. Every officer froze. Even Vance. Sir Thatwell. Collapse the star, Kale said. No emotion. If we trigger it. Vance swallowed. Valkyris, the fleet, everything in this system. Kale nodded. Gone. Brain the weight of history. 3,000 years ago. Earth burned. Not as revenge. As containment. Now, humanity stood at the same edge. On the surface, Nix looked into the entity. Something passed between them. Understanding. Possibility. We could become more, the entity offered. We could end suffering, end conflict. Nix paused. Then, for the first time, spoke not as a weapon, but as something human. At the cost of being us. Broken heart, the refusal. Nix stepped back. No. Fire the end begins. Above, Kale closed his eyes. Just for a moment. Then, execute Sunfall. Sun the star ignites. The system star pulsed. Once. Twice. Then, collapsed inward. A chain reaction began. Valkyris trembled. The entity surged. Trying to expand. Too late. Final confrontation. You would destroy yourselves again. Kale opened his eyes. We already did once. Collision white light. The star went nova. Not outward, but inward first, consuming everything. The planet, the fleet, the entity, all drawn into a collapsing point of impossible gravity. Then, silence. New moon aftermath. Weeks later, at the edge of the system, a single signal flickered. A small probe. Automated. Drifting. It activated. A message began to play. Satellite antenna, the final transmission. Kale's voice. To whoever finds this. Pause. We were not the heroes of this story. Static. We were the warning. Drop of blood, the last truth. There are things in this universe older than war. Older than empires. And they are waiting. Milky Way final line. The signal repeated endlessly into the dark. If you hear this, do not dig.